This is the Glowing Arms project. Glowing wristbands which you can control via your phone and which you can use for dancing, riding on a bike, long-term exposure photos, or whatever else you want to use them for. Let me show you why I even built them in the first place and how you can easily build them yourself without writing a single line of code and without any previous soldering experience in less than 2 hours. Hi and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to show you how you can build your own glowing wristbands for dancing, riding on a bike, or for making long-term exposure photos. It look really awesome. So in case you wondered why I even built these glowing wristbands in the first place, let me tell you a little bit about my background and my history first. First of all, I love LEDs. Mainly because of two important communities that I was meeting over the last few years. First of all, Burning Man, where I was joining in 2018, which is like a temporary city in the middle of the desert, full of art and full of LEDs. And the other scene is the hackspace scene, community organized make and learning spaces, where one of the things people also have in common is that they tend to like LEDs a lot. Second, I love dancing nowadays, which used to be very different actually. I felt very uncomfortable dancing just a few years ago. But over the years I had more chances to actually go into clubs and really nice communities and got more relaxed with it. And the third reason, and also the initiator of why I actually ended up getting LEDs for dancing, was a person I met in 2018, Burning Man related after party in New York. A guy who had gloves with LEDs on his fingertips and was doing a really cool performance to a friend of him. And it just looked really fascinating, and so I wanted to get my own LED gloves to do the same. So I bought some LED gloves online, and I guess more the cheap ones. They turn out to be not the best quality at all. They were quickly getting damaged and the LEDs were basically falling out of the glove. So while the idea was really cool, the glove really wasn't that much. Even a higher quality LED glove that I got at some point was just not really comfortable to wear and to actually use. So I searched for alternatives. And actually I had the idea then to get fairy lights. Basically these LED strips with some wire, which usually get used for Christmas decoration, I think. And that actually worked out pretty well, for the most part. Well, for the most part was maybe a little bit too optimistic. They had some big issues. First of all, they have been very fragile, so they easily have been getting damaged and completely broken, so I had to replace them very often. The other thing is that they use these coin cell batteries, which are not rechargeable, and the battery life was really poor. After one evening, the battery was basically already empty, and after just a few hours of dancing, the brightness even of the LEDs was getting a lot weaker. So I thought about how to create a better alternative to the fairy lights. And I found a solution by combining a wristband with some LED strip and an already existing microcontroller that you can just buy online, and therefore it doesn't require any coding at all. And I love this combination. It was a lot more customizable, both the colors of the LEDs and also the brightness. The battery life was massively longer. I was barely able to make it through one of 4 battery bars in a single night, while with the fairy lights this was not even close to that. So turns out these LEDs are really great for dancing, but not just for that, also for on the bike, if you want to show if you turn directions or if you just want to be more visible and increase your safety, and also great for making long-term exposure photos like the ones that you can currently see. And because I made the Glowing Arms project open source, it means everyone can also make changes to it and improvements. which is exactly what then happened earlier this year when I met someone who was really excited about the Glowing Arms project and wanted to build it himself. And on top of that, he made some really good recommendations on how to further improve it. And so, without further ado, now I'm going to show you how I can build exactly that improved version of the Glowing Arms project. Let's get started! So, first we need to get some materials, which you can buy online or in a local store nearby you. First, we need some wristbands. To make sure that both the battery and the microcontroller fits in, I recommend getting the friendly Sweden wristbands. Next, we need 2 of the Govee Dream Color 2-meter LED strips, the ones with USB. But since we only need the microcontrollers, you can use the LED strips for another purpose. To power both the LED strips and the microcontroller, we need 2 ANO power banks with 5000 mAh each. They come with a power button as well, so instead of plugging out the USB cable, you could just press the button to turn everything off. For the actual LEDs, we use the WS2812B LED strips, the ones with 144 LEDs per meter. We also need 2 angled USB cables like those to power both the microcontrollers and the LED strips. To fix the LED strips around your arms, we're gonna use some Velcro strip. So these are the core parts that we need, but we still need some extra equipment. For one, we need access to a soldering iron that can go all the way up to 450 degrees Celsius, so we can solder the parts on the microcontroller as well. Also we need some kind of solder. Also we need some kind of wires. I recommend red, green and black ones, as well as a screwdriver and a Phillips screwdriver, scissors, or even better, a wire stripper. Also some electrical tape and a hot glue gun, and optionally also some needle and thread. Awesome, now we have everything. You can start building it at home, or even better, go to your local hackspace, which is a community organized make and learning space. In my case, it's X9 in Berlin. Okay, so first we want to open the microcontroller. So we take the screwdriver and go to the side here and carefully open it. Next we want to use the Phillips screwdriver to remove the screws. And since we don't need the cables on the right side, you can just cut them off. Great, now we have the microcontroller ready and we can go to the next step. So we want to take the angled cable and wrap it around the battery. Basically we want to see how long we need to cut it to make sure it fits. The best way to position the microcontroller is with the buttons upwards. This way, in case you want to control the microcontroller using the buttons, you can do so. Since the cable is really stiff, we want to cut off the protective part at the bottom of the cable. This way it gets a lot more flexible for wrapping it around the battery. If your cable has a metallic looking layer like this one, carefully cut it off with your scissors. Inside the cable we now see multiple wires, but we actually only need power, red and ground, in this case black. So the other ones we just cut off. So now let's prepare the wires for soldering. So if you have a wire stripper, just cut off the tips of the wires, or otherwise just use your scissors to cut carefully off the tip of the wire. Now let's do the same thing to the extra wires which we got for connecting the LED strip and the microcontroller. And make sure that the wires are longer than the height of the battery, so they can also reach outside of the wristband, all the way to the LED strip. Once you're done with one of the wires, use it as a reference to cut the other ones as well in the same length. And now, time again for the wire stripper. Or if you don't have one, the scissors. And now the last preparation step is to add solder to the tip of the wires. This way it's a lot easier to solder them to the microcontroller as well as to the LED strips. By the way, if you have access to some helping hands, now is a good time to use them, to stabilize the wire and make this soldering a lot easier. Heating up the soldering iron to 350 degrees Celsius is probably enough for your solder. Oh, and always remember to clean the tip of your soldering iron to prevent the oxidation from making soldering a lot more difficult. Now we're ready to solder everything together. Starting with the USB cable. So first we solder the black ground wire to the pin all the way on the right side. So it seems there's a protective coating on top of the microcontroller. Plus, the solder that they used has a higher melting point, so you first want to change your soldering iron to 450 degrees Celsius, otherwise you probably won't be able to melt it. As you can see, I had some difficulties with keeping the microcontroller in place, and I accidentally always moved it while soldering. You can easily solve that by using some helping hands to fix the microcontroller, or if you don't have access to any, just use some tape and fix the microcontroller to the desk in front of you. Once we're done with the black ground wire for USB, let's give the microcontroller some juice and connect the red power wire to the microcontroller as well. So while you don't need any existing soldering experience, patience definitely helps a lot, because it might not work the first time you try to solder a wire to the microcontroller. However, if that's the case, just make a short break and continue with another pin. For example, the data pin on the left side with the green wire. Once we soldered the wires from the USB to the microcontroller, we just place the additional wires that we have on top of them. This way we can just use the same power source from the USB to also power the LED strips as well. So now, let's prepare the LED strip. You want to make sure that the LED strip is long enough that it wraps all around your arm. The best way to do that is to put an external battery inside the wristband, then start wearing the wristband, and then wrap the LED strip all around your arm. So you want to make sure that the LED strip is a few centimeters longer than required to wrap it once around your arm. This way you have a few centimeters over, so it can stick easier together and not accidentally open up again. Once you know where to cut the LED strip, I can't stress it enough, please make sure that you leave as much space as possible for the contacts, otherwise soldering really becomes a mess. So you really want to make sure that you cut off as little as possible of the contacts to prevent that from happening. Also, you need to cut off a few millimeters of the plastic coating, just to make sure that you don't accidentally melt it while you try to solder the contacts. Well, you could also use the contacts on the side where the LEDs are. Instead, I highly recommend using the other side, which is a lot easier to solder. And now, after adding some solder to the contacts, we add the wires and solder them to the LED strip. So if you solder the wires to the back of the LED strip, power, red, is at the bottom, while data, green, is in the middle, and ground, black, is at the top. And there it goes. Well, we are not finished yet. but it's glowing, yay! So now let's make the whole thing a lot more stable. We take some Velcro and cut off enough that we can wrap it once around the LED strip. We need to do that for both sides. And I highly recommend that you choose the size that has these hooks for the part that's closer to the external battery and that actually connects to the wristband. And then use the softer part for the other part of the LED strip, so basically the part that's outside. And then you wrap the Velcro around the LED strip and add some hot glue to it. Don't forget to also apply pressure on top to make sure that it actually is cooling down in a good shape. Oh, and try to make sure that you don't get any hot glue on top of the Velcro, otherwise it sticks less together than it should. So in addition to adding hot glue to the endings of the LED strip, you should also add hot glue to the connection to the microcontroller, just to make sure that the wires stay in place and don't accidentally fall off. And to make sure that the hot glue stays in place, you can use some electric tape around it for the microcontroller. Once we're done with that part, we just place the microcontroller on top of the external battery with the buttons facing upwards and fix them with the electric tape on top of the external battery. It's perfectly fine, by the way, to cover all of the microcontroller and the wires with the electric tape. In fact, you should make sure that you cover all of the wire that's in the bottom part of the external battery, so they only stick out at the very top. This way, when you actually put in the external battery into the wristband, you don't accidentally damage the wires and destroy everything. So once you're done with everything, carefully and slowly push the external battery and the whole package basically inside the wristband. It might take some time, but you're gonna get it. So now you're pretty much done. The only thing that I still recommend, however, is that you want to add some gun using a needle. The reason is that the wrapping around the LED strip doesn't really connect very well with any kind of glue, including the hot glue. So while it might stick at first, it is a good idea to further fix it by using some gun and pushing it through the whole hot glue by using a needle. Just a few stitches should be enough for that. And of course, if you feel that's still not sticking good enough, you can add some extra hot glue to it on top of it. Now let's clean it up a bit by cutting off unnecessary parts, and we are done. And now, last but not least, let me show you how you can control your LEDs using the Govee Home app. So once you downloaded the app for iOS or Android, open the app, and in the top right corner you can see a plus icon. Then click on the Bluetooth icon and you can see the screen where we can add the LED strips that we have. Click the first one and then wait for it to connect. You can now enter a random name, you can call it ARM1 or whatever else you want to call it. And now you can see there's actually an update available, which I highly recommend to install since it includes new features and further improvements for the LED strips. Once it's done, it will automatically restart the LED strip. So once the update is complete, we can now control the LED strip using the Govee Home app. Over here we have the three different main modes: music, color and scenes. In color you can both change the colors for all the LEDs at the same time or for individual LEDs separately. My favorite is having two colors for each wristband. In the scenes section we have all kinds of different predefined modes, like the rainbow mode, which looks really nice as well. So the awesome thing about this microcontroller is that it has an integrated microphone, so it can actually react to music that plays around you without the need of any smartphone whatsoever. And in the music section, you can control the different modes, how it should react to music. If you want to further customize the colors, you can also go to the DIY mode and, for example, apply different multiple colors and like shifts between different colors. Yeah, feel free to play around with it. And if you want, you can even turn off or on the LED strip using the power button in the app at the top right corner. But I honestly prefer using the power button on the external battery, since this way the LED strip doesn't consume any power at all. So, once you're finished with the first LED strip, let's add the second one as well. And let's call it Arm 2 in this case. You sometimes might see some connecting issues. If that's the case, just click on Reconnect again. It's just a weird kind of behavior that sometimes it doesn't work the first time. But don't worry, the LED strip is not broken because of that. And Govee might fix this app issue in a future update as well. So now, once again I do my favorite thing, having two colors on one LED strip. And let's turn on the other arm as well again. Also, in case you have some issues with turning on or off the LED strip, you can also try the same using the on or off buttons in the main screen. There you go. Two colors on both sides. Perfect, I love it. So, I really hope you enjoyed this video. In case you did like it, there will be more projects like this coming up and more videos about them and how you can build them yourself. Everything that has to do with LEDs, laser cutting, software development, especially web development, and yeah, maybe something else as well. So if you want to support me and you want me to continue working on projects like this, feel free to become a Patreon. I will post regular updates there on the whole process of new projects I work on. You get early access to them as well, and I will post monthly video updates about everything I worked on during the last month. So, hope you have fun with your glowing wristbands, and hope to see you in the next video with my next project. Bye!